So this is a video on how to take a regular Keurig coffee maker and connect it to a water line. Now, Keurig has a model of coffee maker that has a water line fitting on it, but in order to get that, you have to buy that, and then you have to buy an extra tank that has a water line fitting, and it costs about $400. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing with a regular Keurig coffee maker that costs $100. This is brand new, and I just bought it, and I bought a float kit, and these are available on Amazon. This one costs $10, and then I bought an activated carbon filter. And the reason we're just using a carbon filter is because we have really soft water here. In areas where you have hard water, you really want to use a reverse osmosis filter, because despite what you might read on the internet, the thing is that these coffee makers only last about 5 years. And what kills them is the buildup of scale. And the only way that you can keep scale from building up in the machine is to use soft water that doesn't have a lot of minerals and things like that in it. And if you have a water softener, that's great, but the problem with the water softener is it's just replacing all the calcium stuff with sodium, so you're still going to have scale buildup. It's just going to be different kinds of scale. It's going to be sodium scale instead of calcium. But it's still going to wreck the coffee maker unless you have a filter on it. But in this area we have soft water, so we don't have to worry about that. So now here's the key on how this project works. So this is the coffee maker, and this particular model is K70. It's a 75 ounce one, and that's about the smallest one that you can do this with. Now they make smaller ones like 50 ounce coffee makers and even single cup makers, but those are too small for this particular project. If you take a look at this, you'll notice that Keurig has a water tank on the side that is kind of a strange looking shape. And if you look down in there, you'll see, and Keurig does this deliberately because they don't want to have a nice rectangular water tank in there that would have plenty of space for a float. They want to just have this kind of weird looking tank that's hard to get anything into. So with recent Keurigs, they have now started selling this, including this filter that sits down on top of there and sticks up in the tank. And of course the filter would just simply interfere with a float or anything like that. So we're not going to use that, but I'm going to show you the issue with that. So if you come over and you take a look at the lid, here's the float, and you'll see that the float we're using, when it's going to sit in here like this, and it's going to connect into the tank of that, and when we adjust it so the float goes down and then goes up, it's going to interfere with this thing. So we'll take this filter out of there, and so you can now see that when the float's in there, there's just barely enough, if the hole is drilled in the exact right spot of the top of the tank, for the float to sit in there and be adjusted to go up and down so that it turns on and shuts off the water supply. So the first thing after the unboxing is, for the first week, we're going to just run this with water from the sink. We're not going to install the float yet, because in case there's something wrong with the coffee maker and it has to be sent back, then we'll be able to send it back, and without a hole in it. But then I'm going to drill the hole in it and then put the float in it. And it's going to go in here, and then we'll run the line so that we'll take this, and this is just a carbon filter that has a quick connect filter on it, and then the tube will go on the one side, and then I'll cut a length of tube that comes out of it and then goes into a fitting, one of these quick connect fittings, that then screws into the top of the float. And then the other end of the line will go into the valve that's already here. It's got a quick connect on it. Now, one thing that's important about doing this kind of a thing is that you'll notice in this particular setup that the sink has a ridge around the edge of it like this. So the coffee maker is going to sit here. That way, if there's a problem with the float and it sticks or something open and the coffee maker starts overflowing, then it'll just go down into the sink, and instead of going all over the floor and making a mess. If you don't have a sink like this, if you just have a counter that's flat, one possible way of handling that would be to get a pan like is used under a small water heater. And so then that pan would then sit under the coffee maker, so that if the setups goes wrong and starts overflowing, then it would go down in the pan, and then you'd duct the pan to the sink, and then that way it wouldn't be going all over the floor. So here is the coffee station we're going to be replacing with the Keurig machine. The coffee station is the typical large industrial station that's got a big carafe, a big giant coffee basket and filter, makes a whole bunch of coffee at once, and it's fed by a water line. We're going to replace this with a Keurig machine that's also fed by a water line. It's just too expensive to make a huge amount of coffee and then the coffee goes stale, and it doesn't taste very good. The Keurig. Before we move into the section of the video that talks about how to modify the coffee maker, I wanted to spend just a few minutes going over some other aspects of these Keurig coffee machines. First of all, I wanted to kind of mention that the coffee maker we're using is the Keurig K Elite single serve coffee maker, and I bought mine off the website. If you buy it off the website, you get to choose different colors. You can of course also buy it off of Amazon, where it's a few dollars more expensive, but generally one color. And the thing is that this coffee maker model doesn't have a fitting on it for a water line, but the Keurig does have a coffee maker model that does, and that is this. But in order to get the water line connected to it, you have to buy the water line kit, which is right here, and then you have to plumb the water into it, and then you have to take off the tank that's on the existing one here and replace it with the tank that's on the kit. And I would advise doing against this, not just because of the fact that it's a $277 machine and $139 kit plus additional plumbing components versus a $110 machine. But the thing is, these machines seem to fail because the pumps wear out, and there doesn't seem to be any guarantee anywhere on the Keurig website that this model of coffee maker has any better pump than the inexpensive model of the coffee maker.
Um, I've gone through a number of these used Keurig machines, and they all seem to fail the same way, which is that the pumps start getting noisier, 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 because what's happening is that the pump is wearing out a lot, and so it's the pistons and pumps and everything else start slapping around more, and it vibrates more and just makes a racket, and then of course it doesn't pump out the right amount of water, and then that electronics gets really confused about it, and then the coffee maker is junk. Um, so that's why I think this is a better solution. And it doesn't really cost a lot because to do the modification, you really only need to spend $10 on a kit, a float kit, which you can get off Amazon. Um, a couple other things I'll point out about these is you really want to, if you're going to go to the Keurig machine, you really want to look into getting a reusable K cup. This there's several styles on the market. The first is a style that has a single hole in the top, and that will work with the K Elite. And the second is the one that has multiple holes in the top. This also works with K Elite, but it also works with additional Keurig coffee makers that have the additional um, water inlets at needles at the top. And I think that the additional needles are probably just a marketing gimmick. But if you have one of those, then you need this kind of cup if you're going to use a reusable cup. And the last thing I'll mention is descaling. Um, Unlike kind of a regular coffee maker, which you kind of ignore um, for almost forever and not bother to descale, these machines do have to be descaled um, on a more regular basis because they have a lot of small water passages in them. Keurig has instructions on how to do it, and but I will hasten to say that regular descaling, even though it will help extend the life of the machine, it really doesn't extend it that much. Um, so it it will kind of help it to fail more gracefully. Instead of just jamming one day or plugging up or something like that, it if you do regular descaling, the machine will just gradually get noisier and noisier and noisier as the pump wears out. But at least you'll have some warning that it needs to be replaced. Um, in looking at all the used Keurigs and the various thrift stores, the ones I bought and returned and bought and returned, looking for a pearl, you might say. And I haven't found a used Keurig machine that was worth, even picking up. It seems that the maximum amount of life that I've ever seen one of these Keurigs last is around 5 years. So that's another reason why you want to buy the cheapest one because it's just they're all going to last about that long. Anyways, we'll go on to the next section of the video.
Here's the coffee we use for this. It's whole bean coffee, and we just grind it over here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to put this in here, and we're going to mount it so that the float goes down into the largest spot, which is going to be there. So the hole is going to be around here. Okay. So that is right there. So that's going to be roughly right there. Okay. That looks right. So to drill a nice hole in the plastic, we need to figure out how big the drill bit's going to need to be, and it looks like the largest drill bit may be what we need. That probably still won't be big enough, so we'll have to, yeah. It's going to be, we don't have a big enough drill bit. Wish I had a round file.
Yeah, just thinking of the same thing.
Okay, so now we got the hole drilled in there, and you take this, and it's got 2 washers. One's rubber and the other is a plastic, and just make sure there's no shavings in it. Goes in there like that, and then that goes down like that. And then you just adjust the float so that it's not interfering, and tighten it down. So now it looks like this. You can see that the float's there. And we're going to do the adjustments on the float, which this float comes with, there's no adjustment screw. You just basically, it's a friction fit thing, and just go like that. So it'll hang down. So we'll adjust it some more. Now, when it fills up with water, it should shut the water flow off. Like that. Okay. Just make sure that it's not interfering. Just a little bit, so turn it a bit. Alright, so anyway, got this, and we just take this fitting here. It's got a O-ring on it, so it seals down on top of that. We'll put it like that. We need that. Next thing is set the filter in line. And you notice that the flow has an arrow going that direction. So we take the water line, should just shove right in. Okay, and now if we turn this on, it should start coming out of the filter. bit of water through that to make sure that all the extra charcoal particles get out. And another thing, it's a good idea, is put a little pressure on it to make sure the hose doesn't pop out. Okay. Now, just need to add some, figure out that's going to probably sit behind there, so we'll need a foot or so of that.
Just a pressure fit?
Yeah, it cramps down, and to get rid of it, you pull this out and push that down in theory. But most people probably just cut them off. So then, should be able to turn this on. And just make sure that this actually works right.
Good thing we have a sink like we do.
Yeah, that's, yeah. And then just make sure that the valve actually shuts off. And of course it takes a while, but eventually it does. I think we're okay there. We'll have to check it in a few hours to make sure that it is actually stopped.
Mhm.
If it keeps dripping, we can probably turn the valve down here, which will reduce the pressure on that side.
Right.
So for right now, let's see if we can just leave it so that it. In fact, let's see if it actually does shut off. Yeah, so I mean, it does shut off if you push it up hard enough.
So eventually it'll show.
Eventually it'll shut off. And of course, if we want to have some additional insurance, use some of the packing tape that came with the unit to make sure that the lid doesn't push itself up and go off somewhere. And there you have it. And so and it does appear that it's stopped actually. So for descaling, it's fairly easy. You just basically take the lid off, dump the water out, fill it about halfway up with descaler or whatever, and then put the lid back down and let the float fill it up the rest of the way, and then do the descaler. So let's organize this. This crappy PEX pipe. Hate it, but oh well. That's what everybody uses these days.
Yep. So we got.
Okay.
Okay.
So that should take care of it.